Welcome back to the 50 State Cold Case Spotlight, and we are in Wisconsin for day one, and today I will be spotlighting a case from our comment section, Kayla Berg. Thank you, Morgan, for suggesting this case. In May of 2009, some big life changes were happening for 15-year-old Kayla and her family. Her mother, Hope, made the decision that she and Kayla would be leaving their home in Antigo, Wisconsin, and moving to Texas so that Hope could find a better job. Kayla's older brother, Jimmy, who was over 18 at the time, decided to stay in Wisconsin. Hope chose Texas because it's where she grew up and was familiar with the area. However, this move wouldn't last long because Kayla's father, who still resided in Wisconsin, had been suddenly diagnosed with cancer, and Kayla told her mother she wanted to move back in case something happened to her father. Hope said that she and Kayla discussed it, and together they made the decision to go back to Wisconsin. Less than 3 months after their move to Texas in July of 2009, Kayla and Hope returned back home to Wisconsin, and that's when Hope says that Kayla started to get into trouble. Kayla and her friends were hanging out with boys that were much older than them and going to parties out of town. In August, Kayla and one of her friends would go to a party without telling either of their parents. The next morning, when both sets of parents realized that neither of them had heard from either girl from the night before or that morning, the parents panicked and headed to the police station to report their daughters missing. While they were filling out the missing police report, one of the parents would receive a call letting them know that the girls were safe. On August 1st, just a few days later, a family friend named Kevin would pick up Kayla from her father's house around 8:45 p.m. to hang out and ride around town. Kevin was a friend of her brother Jimmy's. He had been at their home several times, ate dinner with them. He basically grew up with them. This wasn't a stranger to Kayla, and her family didn't think anything of it. Just like many teens in the 90s and early 2000s, it was said that Kayla and Kevin were driving around and gardening. According to witness statements, Kayla and Kevin would be seen at McDonald's around 9:30 p.m., where Kayla stopped to see a friend who was working there that night. This friend said that Kayla and them had made plans to call each other later that night, but sadly that never happened. Investigators wanted to make it clear in February 2024 that despite the references to seeing Kayla after this interaction, this sighting is officially the last sighting of Kayla. On August 12th, the following morning, Kayla's father, James, calls Hope and tells her that Kayla didn't come home. Hope decides she's going to call all of Kayla's friends and acquaintances and figure out where she is, which includes Kevin. It takes some time for her to get a hold of Kevin at first, and he tells her that his phone died. And then he only responds by text saying that he dropped her off someplace in Wasua, and he didn't remember exactly where because there were a lot of one-way streets. It wasn't odd for Kayla to spend one night at her friend's house, but now Hope was trying to figure out which friend's house she could be at. Hope thought that it was also possible that she could be at another party just like a few days prior, or maybe she had gone to see her on-again, off-again boyfriend, 19-year-old Miguel. Hope said after a couple of days, she knew that she had this gut feeling that something wasn't right, that this wasn't like the incident from a few days prior. Hope continued to talk to Kayla's friends and acquaintances and track others down that knew Kayla in hopes of finding her, but about 5 or 6 days later of not hearing from her, that's when they decided to report Kayla missing. Initially, police would list her as an endangered runaway. After police spoke to Kayla's friends and relatives and no one had heard from her, they decided to question Kevin since he was the last person seen with her. Detective Sergeant Dooley was assigned to Kayla's case, and he questioned Kevin about his time with Kayla. Kevin told the detective that he and Kayla drove about 35 miles south of Wasua because Kayla had asked him to drop her off at her ex-boyfriend Miguel's house on Highway 52. However, Miguel no longer lived there at this time, and Kayla was well aware of that, and that stuck out to the detective. Detective Dooley said, of course the question has come up in the investigation that doesn't make sense of why she would direct him to that particular house. Not only did Kayla know that Miguel had moved, but the home off the Highway 52 had been condemned, and they are positive that Kayla knew where Miguel had moved to because she was just at a party at his new house a week prior. Hope also didn't believe this story. She said that Kayla wouldn't have had anyone drop her off at a street in the middle of the night because she is scared of the dark. And she wouldn't have had anyone leave her at an abandoned house. Hope wonders if Kayla had OD'd while she was with Kevin and he panicked, or if he did drop her off and somebody else picked her up, what happened to her? Unfortunately, investigators don't have any way to track Kevin or Kayla's whereabouts during this time because they have no cellular data to verify their location. And in 2009, investigators do decide to charge Kevin with second-degree reckless endangerment, which allowed them to send teams of investigators to search Kevin's home in Deerbrook, where he was living with his parents, and to seize his car. Investigators would also search Lincoln County because her ex Miguel's phone would ping there twice the night Kayla went missing. Hope says when it comes to Miguel that he never talked to her, he never reached out to her when it came to looking for Kayla. And even though they weren't dating at the time, she found it odd that her ex-boyfriend wouldn't reach out. When it comes to what investigators found during the search of Kevin's home and car, Detective Dooley said, quote, "There's some evidence that was collected and nothing that leads to where Kayla would be located at this point," unquote. In 2010, investigators used the National Guard to help them search Kevin's parents' property using thermal radar to look at soil distribution via helicopter. In 2011, investigators would conduct a second search at Kevin's parents' property and a potato farm where Kevin worked at the time of Kayla's disappearance. Investigators stated that they were interested in these two properties because they brought in human remains detection dogs, which led them to do more intensive searches on those properties. But nothing related to Kayla was ever found in either one of these properties, which led a judge to drop the charges against Kevin because of lack of evidence. Hope says this decision still makes her blood boil. Hope said, quote, "I can't explain the feeling. It was just sickening," unquote. Hope couldn't believe that the charges were dropped because whether they found anything at these properties or not, Kevin admitted that he took a minor over county lines and that they gardened together, and he dropped her off on some streets he doesn't remember, and somehow that doesn't equate to reckless endangerment. Years would go by. In December 2023, police would receive a tip from an inmate in a Wisconsin prison system offering information to investigators that would lead them to the search of Kewaunee County. Before this, most of the physical searches for Kayla were done in central and north central Wisconsin. Kewaunee County is about 100 miles east of Antigo, where Kayla was last seen. Investigators first brought out search dogs, then investigators were able to dig, and they worked with anthropologists and a crime lab. The process took over 2 weeks, but in the end, nothing was found. Hope said that it's hard to believe that someone would manipulate and use the story of her daughter to try to get something. Hope has never given up on Kayla, and she says she never will. Hope now has a granddaughter named Kayla, and she says there is nothing that will take away the pain of her daughter missing, but little Kayla is her reason for being here right now. Sadly, Kayla's father, James, would pass away of cancer, never knowing what happened to his daughter. The McDonald's that Kayla was last seen at has been torn down and now is just an empty lot. Time has moved on, but those that love Kayla never will. Hope wants to make it clear that she will never give up the quest to learn about the truth about what happened to her daughter. And it sounds like there are some good investigators on her side. Kayla is a white female, 5'2", with brown hair and brown eyes, and at the time of her disappearance, she was around 108 pounds. She has her ears and navel pierced, and she also has scar on the right side of her nose and around her right shin. Anyone with information in the whereabouts of Kayla is urged to call the Antigo Police Department at 715-627-6411. I want to thank you all for taking the time to get to know Kayla today, and don't forget, every time you see those missing and murdered posts on social media, to hit like and share, because every time you share a face, you get closer to solving a case. Thank you for tuning in for another 50-State Cold Case Spotlight, and I will see you guys back here tomorrow for Wisconsin, day number 2, and my greatest apologies to the great state of Wisconsin for butchering town and city names. I grew up in North Dakota, Minnesota, and I never got them right. My apologies, especially to my Wisconsin friends.